What's up, YouTube? Siegfried Too Late here, and today we're going to be reacting to Asmongold's final review of Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. I have actually been watching his stream since he started. I was there in the beginning. Um, I don't usually get to catch all of it due to living in Japan, meaning that he doesn't usually start his stream until 12:30, and with his hour to 2 hour intro. Usually, sometimes it could be around 1:30 to 2 a.m. my time when he starts, and I do usually work. But I will say that I have ended up, last week I stayed up till 4 in the morning just to watch him finish A Realm Reborn. With that said, I didn't expect him to really enjoy the game as much as he does. I expected him to hop in the game, it really not be his thing, and pretty much, I expected him to give the game a real shot. I expected to see him go to 80 when he said he wasn't going to boost. I believed him 100%. Because if there's one thing I learned actually watching him after getting over his whole you know weeb crap towards 14, I learned he was a pretty honest person, and usually what he said he was going to go through with. So I'd always actually trust him to play through the whole game, um, and I just didn't expect it to be for him. And then my biggest concern, I'm not gonna lie, was him making criticisms, and then of course the Final Fantasy 14 fanboys, which we know who they are, pretty much attacking him and going crazy on him, even if he gave the game a real chance. My personal opinion, if you give the game a real chance, you have every right to criticize it, every right to not like it. If you boost to 70 and then complain when you don't know mechanics, that's a different story. But with that said, let's go ahead and just take a look at his reaction. Going up on over here. I have no sound. Why do I have no sound? Is it this up? All right, it's having an issue here. What's going on? Volume mixer. Ah, okay, 1 second. I'm gonna pause it. I'm gonna restart it and have it switch over. Okay, I fixed it. I plugged in my controller and switched the audio over to the controller, even though my controller doesn't use it. So let's go get this going. I just want to point something out. Look at his computers in the background. They're literally playing the Shadowbringers trailer. That's literally Minfilia right. No, sorry, that's Ishtola right there. No, I said Minfilia. Ishtola. He literally has the shadow. This shows you he was just playing Final Fantasy 14, which is hilarious, actually. Now, I just want to say real quick. Those are the most annoying. I think honestly, okay, your most annoying Final Fantasy 14 fan base are the fanboys that defend the game and attack anyone who has any form of criticism. The second most annoying are the people that tell you how to play the game. I have a friend who was a 1.0 player, and her friend, who became my friend, told her pretty much be this class and told her how to play, and she didn't play for very long at first. Luckily, she's come back, and me and her play a lot together. But I mean, I don't know what's so hard for people to understand that when you tell somebody how to play a game, they don't want to play a game. This is the reason I won't play Dragon Age. The one time I tried to play Dragon Age, my friend was telling me, "Oh, do this, do that, do this, do that." It wasn't me playing the game. He was playing the game and just having me do the actions. And I mean, I'll say like it's been really frustrating watching his streams just because I have to listen to all the people who say stupid things they don't know. People who tell him that this armor is dyeable even though it's not. People who tell him to find this weapon on the market board even though it's not. Case in point, the Dreadward weapons, which have never been on the market board. He gets a chest armor and people tell him, oh, he can dye the chest armor. No, he can dye the crafted one, not the one he got. Um, People who have no idea about the classes and they tell like I've heard them people tell things about Dark Knight and they obviously have no idea how Dark Knight plays because they're telling him things that are old Dark Knight, not current Dark Knight. A good one is mana management. Dark Knight is not mana management anymore. Dark Knight is simple. Don't hit 9,000 MP. Don't go below 3,000 MP. That's it. And keep your buff up nonstop. Dark Knight's a very easy class to play. Basically, play for basics. The harder parts of Dark. I mean, I'm not an expert raider at Dark Knight. I'm not gonna act like I'm you know I don't double weave or do stuff like that. Mostly because I am a casual player. But as a casual player in Dark Knight, I can tell you straight up, it's not about mana management. It's a very simple. Don't go below 3,000. Don't go above 9,000. Very easy. Dark Knight and Heaven's Ward, when I started playing it, was mana management, and boy was it hard. It was not easy. So definitely the backseat gamers have been so frustrating and annoying. And to be honest, when he started playing the game and was enjoying it, I had a feeling they were going to be the ones that ended up making him hate the game because it would have made me hate the game. So I do want to say kudos to Zach for actually having the determination to finish the game and the ability to ignore all of the idiots in his chat that just won't shut the hell up and let him play the game. A couple things. First, if you're a big fan of D&D, and I really hope Zach looks into this, one thing that's interesting about Final Fantasy is the original Final Fantasy One, which is pretty much the game that changed all RPGs. I mean, yes, JRPGs, but every single RPG changed because of the original Final Fantasy Nintendo. And if you play the original Nintendo Final Fantasy, it's very much a digital version of D&D. It's you create your character, and of course in Final Fantasy create 4 characters from a list of characters, which were all basic D&D characters. If you think about it, a warrior or fighter, black mage, red mage, a white mage, um, monk. They're all very traditional thief. They're all traditional D&D characters, maybe with a different name, but it's very traditional D&D. Even the skill setup, like playing the original Nintendo Final Fantasy, it is so obviously D&D. The actual spells in Final Fantasy One, the original, not the remake, play just the exact same way the spells work in D&D. So that's something that if you're not aware of, Final Fantasy One on Nintendo is pretty much a digital version of D&D. If you're a big fan of D&D, you would probably really like Final Fantasy One, even with its old graphics. I really hope that Zach can learn that someday and realize that, because I think that'd be a big realization. And I mean, if you take a look at D&D, which is pretty much the let's be realistic. D&D is the godfather, like is the great great grandfather of MMOs. You had D&D, then you had the RPGs, which most of them were horrible. Then you had Final Fantasy, which was the very first RPG that I think properly used D&D mechanics. And that is really what turned into what would become World of Warcraft. If realistically, World of Warcraft is honestly due to Final Fantasy 1. It really is. Because had Final Fantasy 1 not come out and re-imaged and changed the RPG genre from what Ultima and honestly Dragon Warrior, aka Dragon Quest, was back then, because Dragon Quest was not very good. Dragon Quest 1 is not very good. But Final Fantasy reshaped the RPG to what we have now. And it is true that it became a little more like, I mean, oddly enough, Final Fantasy VII is one of my least favorites. I say one of my least favorites because I like it. I don't care for Final Fantasy VIII, except for the summons. I love the summons, that's it. Final Fantasy X annoys the hell out of me. Final Fantasy XII bores me. Final Fantasy IV is my favorite. Final Fantasy III was really good. 5 is really good. 6 is really good. 2 is a really good story, but just really bad mechanics. If they could remake 2 someday with what we have now and like remake it into like a Skyrim-ish game, 2 would be amazing. And 9, I like 9 because it goes back to the roots. But if you do look at traditional Final Fantasies, they are a digital version of D&D, and WoW is pretty much it's the same thing. It's a digital form of D&D, but that never would have occurred without Final Fantasy 1. The other thing is that, when he's talking about redemption, I think honestly that's the reason Stormblood is so weak. Stormblood, if you think about it, is the first time you just have this villain, I'm bad because I'm bad, like literally you have Tsukiyomi, which I can't remember the girl's name. I mean, she's just I'm bad because I'm bad, and she has a redemption at the end, but let's be honest, she's very different from Gaius. Gaius's goal is not to be a dick. Gaius's goal, in his eyes, he is finding a way to save everyone in his own way. He's wrong, but he's trying to find a way to save everyone. That's his goal. His goal is to save everybody. He's not just this tyrannical a-hole that goes around wanting to kill the old people. This is where Stormblood fails. You have Tsukiyomi, which again I can't remember her real name. You have Akehi, her brother, who's just like seriously, he's the iconic anime villain. He's absolutely garbage. And then you have Xenos, whatever. I mean, I'm not interested in Xenos. There's nothing interesting about him. I'm not looking forward to Endwalker to fighting him. I'm looking towards Endwalker to find out more about the Aishin behind him. Who, like, really, what's his story? Because if you played, okay, spoilers here. If you played through Shadowbringers, Shadowbringers reveals why the Aishins are doing what they're doing. And it reveals just who the Aishins were. I mean, like, personally, going through Shadowbringers, I have a whole new viewpoint of La Habrea. I no longer feel La Habrea as this evil person, but I see him in a much more, I would say, human view of just a person trying to save what he loved. So I am curious about the Asian in Endwalker. Um, I'm not really a fan of going after Xenos. I don't know what's going to happen there. I think they should just keep Xenos dead personally. But who knows? Maybe they could do something to make him more interesting. But for him, he's like Xenos is very colorless. He has no color to him. And I really hope we don't get another character like Tsukiyomi or our brother, I think is like Kechi or whatever, because they were just annoying. They're just, look, I'm evil because I'm evil. The girl in Guy Urbania, I can't remember her name, she made a lot more sense. She was much better written for Stormblood because her story made a lot more sense. And while Tsukiyomi started to make sense at the end, it still wasn't that good. I didn't care that much about her, to be honest. Um, so I am going to be curious about how he's going to view about Stormblood when he gets to Stormblood. So let's go ahead and get this back going. 1 second. Oops, nope, not you. Okay. It, this is great because I remember when he first watched was talking about it before playing the game, he said, "I don't really like the music," and now I see a lot of during his streams commenting on how good the music is. Um, I think the issue personally is that he heard clips of the songs, and when you hear clips of a song versus the whole song, it doesn't do the song justice. It really doesn't. So I think had he just heard clips of the songs, it's a little less, impactful. I'm pretty sure it's Ultima Hard mode. I don't think there's an Ultima Extreme. I'm pretty sure it's Ultima Hard mode, but we need an Ultima Extreme because not everyone's gonna be able to do Ultima Ultimate, but an Ultimate Extreme would be pretty cool. I was actually really looking forward to see his reaction to the whole Bahamut Phoenix cutscene after he saw the opening and thought the opening was cool. I think for a lot of people, when they see that opening, it doesn't really make sense, the game. It's just, it doesn't fully make sense until you see that second cutscene. And so I was really looking forward to his reaction, and I'm really glad that, I think for honestly, for anyone coming over in WoW, especially right now when you just have like things being retconned and all of a sudden not making, like, oh, we had it's going this direction, but then for some reason, even though you were going this direction, you're over here. And if you see in some cases, they'll ask about it, and the honestly, the devs that for WoW have no idea how they got here. They just got here. So I think for someone coming from that game where that happens quite a bit, to this going in this direction, and then you seem to be over here, but then it shows you how you got there. You're like, oh, no, 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 this is how you got here. And you see at the end of the coils, you see just how you got here. So it wasn't you're here and now you're here. Now you see how you got here. Another situation that, of course, is going to be happening in Stormblood, sorry, Heaven's Ward is another situation where, without knowing that roadmap, it's going to again look like you're here and now you're here. But when you see the roadmap, you see how you got to that point. And I think for people that are used to just not having that is going to be a big thing for them. I really find it interesting that that's the point that got him engaged. Most people don't get engaged really, really engaged until Heaven's Ward. And the fact that, I mean, I know he's a big Dragon fan, that got him really engaged. Um, that does surprise me. I do think that the big issue when people try to force, when, like I said, when they try to force it, is that it's not so much about it being forced, but they rush it. And so you can all like you can honestly, it's either A, you see it coming a mile away, or B, it's just you haven't had a time to build up to it. When it came to Midgar Sormer, and going into Midgar Sormer, when you very first step into the dungeon, Keeper of the Lake, you just feel the presence of the dungeon. I think Keeper of the Lake is the first dungeon that just has an epic soundtrack to it. I mean, the soundtrack to Keeper of the Lake is pretty much what we got for almost every dungeon in Heaven's Ward. But I don't think your next major soundtrack in a dungeon, like a next really big one that is the equivalent of Keeper of the Lake, is until you get to the vault in Heaven's Ward. And then you have the vault in Heaven's Ward. There's really not one in Stormblood that I can think about. No, no. The last dungeon in Stormblood, the one that the very last one, that one actually has a pretty good. I think that one has a pretty epic soundtrack that just to display, just kind of tells you how important it is. The vault itself, just the soundtrack of the vault tells you how important that dungeon is going to be, just like Keep of the Lake. Funny thing is, in Shadowbringers, it's the very first dungeon. When you get the Homestar switch, you automatically know that dungeon's going to be important. And, like, it's just, I mean, it's absolutely, I don't know, it's so overwhelming when you hear the music to those dungeons. And then when you actually get to the end of the boss and you see Midgar Sormer, yeah, that's definitely that I think is a very big scene. I'm glad that's what's got him hooked. I can't wait to see how he reacts to the whole Midgar Sormer story, uh, especially when he meets Tiamat and where that goes. And then he killed him. No, it's kind of funny. He talks about all the redemption arcs, yet he doesn't talk about Teleji, who literally gets chopped in half. Even they can't show it. There is no redemption for Teleji. Teleji Ejeleji. When I first started watching him, I thought that honestly was going to be his big complaint, just because that has been the number one WoW complaint that I've always heard. Because I do play a WoW sometimes. I'm not playing it currently. I can't really afford the sub, nor do I feel like playing it at the moment. But that's always like the big complaint is, oh, the GCD is so bad. And for me, I'm just like, WoW is not that great either. I mean, like WoW's I play the Death Knight, and maybe that's why. But I have seen myself a lot that I'm spending there waiting for my runes to come back up on my DK. So even though the GCD is faster, you have all of your moves are locked on at least a DK to a secondary source, making it extremely false when you think about how fast it is. Now, to be fair, I could be playing my unholy DK wrong, but I do know that after that I'm just like sitting there waiting for my crap to come up. On a dark in Final Fantasy 14, I've never felt like I'm sitting there. I've always felt like I have something to do, and I am glad to see, if there's one thing I'm really glad to see about Aslan, I'm glad to see that he had some common sense to realize that obviously this is not going to be like this, because that's one thing that and to be fair, the WoW players who complain about it obviously never really they didn't come to the game to give it a real chance. They came in the game just to shit on it, say they played it, so they have the right to shit on it. But the fact is, they for example, Quinn 69. Quinn 69 has no right to shit on the game. He didn't play the game correct. He didn't play the game. I don't want to say correctly. I was supposed to say he didn't play the game. He got his, he didn't learn any of the fights. He didn't learn how to play the game at all, and then he complained about it. And to be real, I would feel the same way if somebody hopped into WoW, didn't give WoW a real chance, boosted, and then complained about WoW. I would literally, case in point, let's say somebody boosts in WoW, then goes and does a Mythic Plus raid, and then gets raged by everybody, and the mass toxicity that we are aware of in WoW is thrust upon him, and then he complains about it. I would not feel pity for him. He boosted. He didn't know how to play his class. He had it coming. And so, it's not just like my protection of Final Fantasy 14. The same thing goes for WoW and boosting and WoW. So, I do think that he's going to find. I don't think it's going to be as hard for him as people are thinking it is. I think a lot of people think he's going to get to the later raids and he's going to wipe and wipe and wipe. And I don't think people realize that for some reason, they're forgetting that Final Fantasy 14 does something really good, and that is building up on the raids. You learned this mechanic at this stage. We're just gonna build that up so that we're gonna add this and this mechanic. Now it's here. Good example is T2. What is it? The targeting one where you'll wipe the entire party. Virus in T2, which is then thrown again in I believe it's Sigmascape 3. And it's the same mechanic. You just have to learn how to handle it with a different set of mechanics. So I think he's going to do fine when it comes to the later ones. I don't think they're going to be as hard as Mythic Plus because if let's be real, a dance is not as hard as having to react. It is a dance. Once you know the fight, it's not a problem. Yeah, that's going to change a lot. He's going to get used to doing that a lot. I think it's one thing I like about being a tank in 14 is that when you're a tank in 14, there's a lot you have to do. Most people realize what you have to do, and most people are going to be respectful of it. Not everybody, because they're gonna realize that and there's a lot of times where a tank can kill the party if they do it right. Like you have mechanics that tanks will have that are usually DPS mechanics, like where tanks have to spread or tanks have to do this or I mean, and if they don't, it'll wipe the party, especially in the later fights. You know the worst thing about this comment is this comment literally doesn't mean very much, has zero effect on the game, but you know there are going to be the fanboys that are now going to flame him for saying that something in WoW is better than 14. even though that something is literally an opinion and he's right to have that opinion, you know some people are going to rage him saying that no, because for them nothing in WoW is better than 14. Oops. Personally, I think too many people honestly shit on Realm Reborn. A Realm Reborn may not be the greatest, but the fact is, if your introduction story isn't going to grab the audience, it doesn't matter how good the expansions are. It doesn't matter how good Heaven's Ward is if a Realm Reborn is that bad. And a Realm Reborn is not that bad. Anyone who talks about how it was so bad, yeah, you're looking back on it after experiencing Heaven's Ward. So yeah, in comparison to Heaven's Ward, a Realm Reborn is bad. But you have to remember that there's a lot of scenes in a Realm Reborn that were just epic. And again, these are spoilers, so I mean, hopefully everyone who watched this already has, you've been watching him, so you already know what's going on. But I mean, like the Nanimo scene when uh, Robon roars like a lion. That's like one of my favorite scenes. Pippin's appearance. I mean, that was really cool. I think you have the primals. I mean, all the primals, which are really, really, really cool. You have I mean, the story with Ultima is really good. The fact is, A Realm Reborn has a boring part here and there, but it's not boring. I mean, like, you can read a good book that might have a boring chapter here and there, but it doesn't make the book boring. A Realm Reborn is not boring. And if you're scared of coming in because of all the people talking about how boring A Realm Reborn is, I don't remember who said it, but they said it best. Final Fantasy XIV players have been spoiled if they think A Realm Reborn is bad. If you played the original vanilla WoW. I don't know how similar Classic is to the original vanilla experience, but if you played vanilla WoW, you're gonna have no problem in a Realm Reborn. So a couple things I want to say as we're at the end of this. First, I know this video is a little long. I was planning to be this long, but well, Shogunai. I do think it's funny because before he started playing, one thing that I've noticed was that he talked about the positivity being fake positivity due to the guidelines. But I think after him actually experiencing the community in game, I think he realizes now that while of course certain toxic behaviors are being restricted by the terms of service, that's not the whole thing. The terms of service does not require people to come up and just want to, you know, do something for you. Uh, and you got to remember, he's Asmongold. He's not this. He wasn't this renowned streamer that the Final Fantasy fan base loved. If anything, the majority of the Final Fantasy fan base didn't like him. The only people who probably liked him were people who actually watched his content. I think the majority of people didn't really care that much. You might have had a few people that cared because of how big he was. But he came into a game where I would say the majority of the players didn't know him or didn't like him. Yet they, after, they started watching him, and after seeing just how fair he was being with the game and the fact that he was doing it right, they that's what got him the positive response, such as when he entered Heaven's Ward, you just had that big old lineup, which started from Rich. I mean, honestly, I think it's a good thing. I think look, I think if you're a streamer, you are a celebrity when it comes to gaming. You just are. People know your face that you don't know. And I think that it's a good thing to have that type of welcoming for them because it just encourages them to want to promote the game more. And I think a big thing about, like, for example, Asmongold, I think, is one of the biggest promotions when you think about it, because you talk about how toxic he was towards the game. And I want to use the word toxic, even, I mean, honestly, just because of the fact that he used the term weeb, which for me really irritates me because I find that very xenophobic when you compare anything from Japan as a weeb thing, when the fact is, weeb should be more kind of, to my opinion, connected to anything that's not Japanese or that's heavily anime-ish. In fact, although honestly, in all honesty, heavily anime stuff from Japan is more otaku. Otaku is the proper term for that. I think if you look at games like Genshin Impact, which I do play, or Honkai Impact, which I play, those are weeb games because they're from a Chinese company, not a Japanese company, and they are copying Japanese animation styles. Those are weeb games. Or any game from the West that copies that style is a weeb game. I don't personally find Final Fantasy XIV a weeb game or an otaku game. I do find a lot of games in Japan to be otaku games, and they're extremely annoying, but Final Fantasy is not one of them. Not many Square Enix games are actually in that category. The only one that would be close is Dragon Quest, but that's only because the actual animator is Akira Toriyama, the animator for Dragon Ball. So seeing Asmund come in and seeing his opinion change, I think this it does several things. One, it shows those who watch him who are from WoW that, hey, you know what? This is the community. This is what I can expect, and this is what I need to behave like. And it shows people that they can have a community again where you can just play a damn game. You don't have to worry about min-maxing. You could just play a game and relax. And I think the biggest thing about Final Fantasy XIV that people need to know is it's all about relaxing, man. Just relax. And so I do think it's funny that his statements on the fake positivity. I think he has a different opinion on that now, even though he hasn't stated it. Um, for those who are saying that he's just playing 14 for the views and that he's gonna, he's doesn't really like the game. I mean, if if there's one thing I've seen about Aspen, he's not fake. He doesn't give a crap what anyone thinks. I mean, on more than one occasion, I've seen him tell people pretty much to shut up in his stream because they're telling him how to run their stream, and I like that. I think that's good. I think he should, in especially with his community and some of his chat, not all of his chat. He needs to have a strong presence. He needs to show them he's not going to take their crap, and I think he knows that. He seems to have a lot of common sense that he knows that if he gives them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and so like he's not going to be someone who's just going to pretend he likes something. He doesn't have to, in all honesty. If he did, he would be quitting. He would be saying, "I'm quitting." Wow, like everybody else. After everything that's gone on, that's what he would do. Um, I'm really happy, really pleased that he's enjoying the game. I think he is a. I think now. I mean, before I wasn't sure about this, but I honestly feel after watching him go through Realm Reborn, I think he's a very good asset for the team. I really hope Square Enix, I mean, I hope they're watching, and I really hope that they get Koji or Soken, or for me, the dream idea would be Koji and Yoshi P on uh, Allcraft. I think getting Yoshi P on Allcraft would be the best thing possible since Yoshi P is a big WoW fan, and I think that would be probably one of the best conversations they could have. I really hope they can get him. I think if they honestly, my personal belief is, if they reached out to Yoshi P and to Koji, I think that they would schedule something. And who knows, they might already have something scheduled, but they're not telling us. So I look forward to that. Um, and it's really important, I think, for the WoW players to realize what 14 is. And if you're in WoW right now and you're having an issue with WoW just due to everything, my personal advice is get a vacation home in 14 and come over here and stay over here when WoW's in the middle of a deep, cold winter. When winter ends, the age of flowers blooming, and the game's worth going back to, go back. You don't have to quit the game permanently, but don't stay in a game you're not enjoying. Come socialize with us, get to know us. Yeah, there are some Wii players. They're annoying as hell. I find them completely annoying, especially living in Japan. I find it irritating. But anyways, I'm glad he likes the game. I'm about to hit 50-minute mark, so I want to stop it here. Um, he's a great asset for the. He's going to be a great asset for the game. I hope he stays. I hope Final Fantasy 14 can become his main game. Not that he plays it all the time, but that it just becomes the main game that he gets as his new main MMO. Unless, of course, wow. Well, to be perfectly honest, he's very good for anything he streams. So for 14's future success, I personally wanted him to make it his main game. But that's just me. And in the end, he makes what he wants to make the main game. I will still support him. Uh, anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Secret Lane signing out.